Today on the Topping Show, Anheuser-Busch Farmers tweet is 100% ratioed. DeSantis and Nikki Haley Xmas tweets. Vivek on Harvard president controversy goes viral. Iconic San Francisco candy shop closed on Christmas Eve. Cummins truck engine manufacturer hit with a $1.7 billion fee for emissions. TGF to buy Desiiki for $1.1 billion. And Tesla has yet another software update for a AKA recall. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December, so if you could click that button, I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Cummins truck engine manufacturers fined for $1.7 billion. This comes to us thanks to an article written by the New York Post. And if you're not a big gearhead or automotive enthusiast, or you just can't read the side of a truck, you may have never even heard of Cummins engines. They're perhaps one of the most famous, iconic engine manufacturers in history. One of those things where when people say an engine is as bulletproof as a Glock, many people would say the vintage Cummins engines were. Now, unfortunately, subsequently, engines have become less reliable throughout time because of the EPA forcing them to do a bunch of BS things, which, fascinatingly enough, if you ever buy a government surplus vehicle or a government surplus diesel vehicle, they don't have, can't but notice, they don't have a lot of the things that you and I have to suffer with in order to hit their environmental standards. The government can get away with it, of course, but we can't. Rules for thee, but not for ye. Me. Thee? I almost said ye. I'll probably go viral. No, probably not. But nevertheless, this comes to us, and specifically, they know that Cummins has agreed to pay specifically $1.675 billion for installing devices on hundreds of thousands of engines to allow them to emit excess pollution. This is the largest ever civil penalty for the Clean Air Act violation. The Justice Department reported last Friday. The departments at Cummins allegedly installed so-called defeat devices to bypass or disable emission controls, such as emission sensors and onboard computers. The department said Cummins used defeat devices on 630,000 2013 to 2019 Ram 2500 and 3500 pickup truck engines, and undisclosed auxiliary emission control devices on 330,000 219 to 2023 Ram 2500 and 3500 pickup truck engines that cheat emission control requirements. Which, again, it's a truck, but nevertheless. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said, quote, preliminary estimates suggest that defeat devices on some Cummins engines have caused them to produce thousands of tons of excess emissions of nitrogen oxides. It is the second largest environmental penalty ever reached, the department said, unquote. The EPA administrator, Michael Reagan, said, quote, vulnerable communities are more likely to reside near highways where these harmful emissions are concentrated, making this agreement critical to advancing our environmental justice agenda, unquote. Cummins says they expect to take nearly $2.04 billion charge in the fourth quarter to resolve regulatory claims relating to nearly 1 million engines, said from the Justice Department and California Air Resources Board. Cummins said, quote, the company has seen no evidence that anyone acted in bad faith and does not admit wrongdoing, which is the entire point of a settlement in an overwhelming majority of cases. It also helps you in terms of time and money. Court cases, as we all know, lawyers are extremely, extremely expensive. So if you go to court and you have to fight it out, that long court battle is just going to cost more and more and more. And of course, the longer the court battle, the more it's in the news, the more it's in the headlines, the more it usually, not always, decreases public perception of the brand. I mean, in this case, I can't help but wonder, perhaps they should have fought it. I mean, so many of these companies are being put out of business and being bastardized with extra widgets that they put on the vehicles and bolstering their EV fleet, not because consumers want them or they're necessarily better for the environment. I would actually argue they're worse given the lithium ion mines that we have to use, all the dangerous acids we have to use to harvest that lithium, as well as the whole life cycle of the process of actually maintaining and operating a EV vehicle. as opposed to a good old Cummins diesel engine. Well, guess what? Not only will those they usually will last hundreds of thousands of miles without the DEET and all the other stuff that they force to put on there. But it's one of those instances where, at the end of the day, if an internal combustion engine dies, let's say there's a catastrophic failure, piston shoots through the hood, or there's something where the engine block cracks, if it's completely beyond repair, at the end of the day, what's an internal combustion manufactured from? Well, harmless metals. Yeah, I guess they'll make them more in terms of the iron engine block. Aluminum engine blocks are really popular. You have amalgamation of different metals to actually make the engine. But at the end of the day, it's just metal. So you drain the oils, you recycle the oil, and the engine blocks you just melt down and you make more stuff because metal is darn near infinitely recyclable, perhaps aluminum being one of the most popular examples. With an EV battery-powered vehicle, well, not only is, in some cases, it's an integral part of the actual structure of the vehicle, so you can't just replace the battery, but it also is an instance where the batteries will cost between, what, $10, $20, $30, $40,000 for an electric battery for a vehicle. Engine goes bad in your little car, a traditional car, it might cost a couple $100, maybe $1,000 at a scrapyard to get a one that was from a tolled vehicle, put that engine in, you're fine. But at the end of the day, lithium is also extremely dangerous, very hazardous to recycle, and there's not as many places that do recycle them, and there's less precious metals at the end of the day. We actually filter it out. So when you look at that's why I'm one of those people when it comes to total life cycle management of the vehicle. And then of course you have to ask yourself, how is this electric vehicle being charged? Depending on where you're located, you actually might be doing even more harm to the environment, ironically enough, if you're getting it from something like coal. Granted, someday the world might wise up and use something like nuclear power, but that day has not yet come. So, interestingly enough, I actually think these would actually be even better for the environment. But nevertheless, getting back to the article, they're saying there's accepting no wrongdoing. There's formal. Again, I'm not a doctor. However, if you click the subscribe button, it might help with my speaking ineptitudes and my stuttering. Again, there's very few guarantees in life. But if you watch the very first couple episodes I've made, there has been some improvement. Some might debate how much or how little there is, but a modicum of improvement nevertheless. So, if you click the subscribe button, it may very well assist with my enunciation, slowing down my speech rate, as well as my stuttering. Again, it's not 100% guarantee. Just saying, it can't hurt to try. Nevertheless, back to the vehicle. They also noted that the 960 vehicles have been recalled and emissions control software will be updated, Cummins said, which previously took a $59 million charge for emission recalls. Let's see here. Cummins first announced in April 2019 that it was internally reviewing the emission certification process and compliance. Let's see here. Yeah, let's get to the fun parts. Go to the comments section. And as we increase every single, well, it seems like every fiscal quarter, the government's just making more and more prohibitively difficult to make an internal combustion engine, which is why these fines are getting slapped on. And it's just a de facto ban. Some of those instances where they're not going to come out and say it's illegal to make a gas engine. However, we're just going to increasing every single quarter, every single year, we're going to increase how difficult it is to actually hit these arbitrary marks for the environment. This CO2 emission has to be this much this year, and this much, so this much. So that the only way you can make a vehicle fleet average is to have electric vehicles and to decrease the amount of production of your internal combustion engines. So it is an attack on your choice for your preferred drivetrain. Granted, if it's up to me, every car would have 3 pedals, aka a manual transmission by default, because it's the most fun you'll ever have, and obviously it's the best. But let's go in the comment section and see what some of the feedback is. Excuse me. Zasu Pitts says, quote, they simply wrote the software so that the engine would perform well during unrealistic tests that did not involve actual road time. If the feds create an artificial environment to conduct their test, why can't you write the software for that? Unquote. Getting 22 likes. New Yorker 76 replied, saying, quote, another perfect example of do what I say, not as I do from this crooked administration. Most of the executives from the EPA and CARB make these decisions to fly on private jets, which emit a larger amount of carbon emissions when compared to commercial passenger planes, anywhere from 10 to 20x more carbon pollution, unquote. They got 49 likes. And it's also government vehicles. They don't have a lot of the crap that they bolt on, which might be in the short term better for the environment, but actually I would argue long term is worse because It actually puts more wear and tear on the engine, and it's worse for the life cycle of the engine. They don't last as long. So it's turning into more of a disposable vehicle. As opposed to, you look at the diesel engines back in the day, they're in a million miles. It's ridiculously great engineering before the government got involved. Exit Right Soon says, quote, "This is about making the internal combustion engine unprofitable and guiding automakers to electric vehicles. This isn't about pollution," unquote. Got 62 likes, and yes, I would agree 110%. It's also fascinating to hear on a global scale everyone keeps attacking the United States for CO2 emissions and pollution when it's not even a fraction of what other countries emit, aka China, the big elephant, or more appropriately, the big panda in the room. Their manufacturing is blossoming for decades. It's partially because, again, low regulation, low interference. So as we'll do a couple more comments here. Let's see. Peter Jacobson said, quote, "I would install one of these devices in my truck in a heartbeat if it improved efficiency and operating cost. And I would never buy a GM vehicle if I couldn't disable their OnStar computer, which allows the cops to stop your vehicle at will," unquote, getting 9 likes. Well, the downside for this person is all vehicles, I believe by 2026, have to have that feature, which, by the way, was voted by both Republicans and Democrats. Both parties said, oh yeah, we want to give the government more power to control your life and your vehicle. Yet another reason to buy something that's vintage, also with 3 pedals, manual transmissions, so much more fun. See. K. Morales says, quote, "Never wanted to Dodge more than after reading this article," unquote, getting 26 likes. Let's see here. Alexander Klinger says, quote, "I'm getting real sick of tyranny," unquote, getting 23 likes. Here. As I scroll through more and more, see, Crooked Joe says, quote, "Cash grab by Democrats to cover their wasteful spending," unquote, getting 3 likes, but I mean, that's not even what was it? A little under $2 billion. That's nothing compared to how much Republicans and Democrats waste every year as the deficit. The fiscal deficit of the United States just grows exponentially. It's up to like $33 trillion thanks to their ineptitudes. So this is just a drop in the big bucket of government ineptitudes and debt. But it'll be interesting to see, hey, why didn't they just go to court and fight this out? I mean, I feel like the automotive community there has to be something they can do to stand up for themselves and stop being bullied around. They're literally being put out of business because of all these governments. Not just the U.S., it's also a huge issue in Europe with the European Union neutering all their vehicles. So I can't help but think it's also just the governments want more control. Electric vehicles are more of a computer, which is even easier to hack, control, manipulate. But let me know in the comments. It'd be fascinating to hear what you have to say. Again, thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in. Trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December. So if you click that button, I really appreciate it. Also, leaving a comment is a great way to give me some additional feedback and how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.